Welcome to Season 2 of the Therapist to Millions podcast, where we get under the skin and into the brains of leading therapists and coaches from around the globe to find out what makes them tick and how they are helping those on the front lines of mental health around the world. Hello and welcome to Therapist to Millions weekly podcast, where we get into the brains and under the skin, or under the skin and into the brains, whichever way around you want it, of the leading therapists from around the world. And all the way from LA over in the US of A, we have Nguyen, who is a licensed psychotherapist and clinical social worker, delivering personalized therapy for children, teens, and adults. He's also a black belt in martial arts and an instructor for over 20 years. I'm not going to mess with him, although he's quite a long way away. And he believes that everyone's battles are a rite of passage towards accessing your greatest hidden power. I love that. And it all begins with you taking 20 seconds of insane courage to step forward towards a different path. And we're going to discuss that today. So, Albert, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Dean, for that wonderful introduction.
Well, listen, you're over in Los Angeles, so I'm sure it's nice and hot and sunny there. We haven't quite stepped into spring yet here, but you're also looking very healthy, very tanned. Oh, it's
Thank you,
terrible.
thank you.
Just stop
I
getting people like
actually
you on the
just
show.
came back from a vacation in Hawaii, so I got more
Oh
tan.
no, even worse. Oh my goodness. Right. So anyway, let's
Yeah.
get stuck into your practice. You've got optiminecounseling.com is your website. It's a really good website as well, by the way. Anyone wants to check it out. We'll put all the links in your show notes as well. What types of therapy do you practice? And what was your story to get you to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, on the surface level, I guess I can be described as a therapist that is very eclectic. I use a combination of different approaches, such as mindfulness, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and I'm very trauma informed. But I think at the core of my practice, empathy is the most important because of the type of interventions and techniques I use. All of these are just words, and through practice on a deeper level, I think there's so much more to therapy than the actual interventions. And therapy is, to me, is about introspection. It's about self-exploration, self-development, and self-realization and self-actualization. I see myself when I work with clients as a fellow traveler in like the vast wilderness, as we call life. And I think it's such a privilege and honor to meet my fellow travelers, who teach me so much about life. And it's just a mutual and collaborative adventure. And I realized aggressively that the most important thing with therapy is creating a psychological safety for others to be seen, heard, and validated. And that this allowed me to knowing this allowed me to accept that I don't always have the answer. Most of the time I don't. And it's just this acceptance that allows me to connect with others without expectations or pressure. And it's this rapport in relationship that is the key, to being helpful. And most people who come to me have a history of broken trust and trauma. So earning their trust and rebuilding that trust through the therapeutic alliance is so important. And when I work with my clients, I really try to be mindful of their mental landscape, like their values, how they think,
Yep.
how they make decisions, and their beliefs. And this helps me to support them in navigating life. And most importantly, I hold space for their painful experiences because I believe that it's in that space that they learn the most about what's most important to them.
I love that. Tell us a little bit about this 20 seconds of insane courage.
Yeah, I feel like, because we're just one decision, one action, one move, one decision just away from change. And I think that's just those small steps that you take. And if you can just have that bit of courage, even in the least bit, and just taking that one step outside of your comfort zone is so important. And I feel like I use that number just because it doesn't require much. It's just a little bit of at a time. And I think that's the most important thing.
And how have you incorporated your martial arts practice into your work?
My martial arts practice, this is has been such a huge part of my life. And I think one of the biggest things about martial arts is that I've been studying that way before therapy. I started when I was a little kid, and it gave me a lot of principles and tenets to follow. I think that philosophy really honed my ability to understand the mind-body connection, and it provided me a sense of appreciation for mindfulness practice and meditation, and also the bottom-up approach where I'm using my body awareness and I'm using and understanding how my body works in moments where it's like high pressure situations, and understanding that when you have the ability to control your body and regulate your body so that you can create calmness even when there's chaos and pressure. I think that's been such a huge practice that I've transferred into my practice as a mental health therapist. And, I think one of the biggest things that I've also learned through the martial arts is that it's all about habits. Habits, when it comes down to it, it's learning how to build habits and developing a sort of mental toughness to get through certain things and the resilience that you need. And I think all that exists in all of us. We just need to learn how to tap into that. And I think through the actual trainings, whether it's martial arts, I like to think of therapy and self development as a form of training as well. So just thinking of it that way has really helped me inform in my own practices as a therapist and helping others in a similar way using my background as a martial artist and just the mentality of being a competitive athlete.
I love that. Yeah, I talk about welcome to the mind gym.
I love it. I love that.
Fantastic. Do you
Yeah.
do meditation? I take you do meditation on a daily basis.
Yes, yes. I actually learned about meditation through the martial arts, which is very different back then. I love that meditation has become a lot more trendy now, and people are a lot more accepting of that. I remember back then when I was a teenager practicing meditation, everyone was like thinking that it was just so much like taboo. It was like a topic that no one talked about. It was so mystical. It seemed like it was just something that it's just beyond a lot of the average, practices that people would normally see. But now it's so accepting, and I love that people are practicing it more.
And I mean, it's something I practice every day, and it's so funny because
Yeah, yeah,
it's the hardest thing to do. And people will tell you this. I mean, there's lots of books
it
being
really
written
is.
about it. The hardest thing to do is to sit down and be quiet and just be with your own thoughts. And as soon as you do,
Absolutely.
your body's like, going, yeah, but there's things to do. I've got stuff to do. But once you train yourself to kind of just be present and
Yes,
just be a watcher of those thoughts, it trains you to be present in every moment. It trains you to be mindful of
I
all moments.
agree.
It's incredible.
That monkey mind, you gotta tame it.
Absolutely. Welcome to the mind gym. It's the zoo.
Yes.
What's your biggest challenge that you're facing as a therapist right now?
The biggest challenge, I think the first obvious thing is the emotional heaviness and intensity that naturally comes with being a therapist.
Mhm.
I mean, we're surrounded by stress, trauma, suicide, and other difficult issues all the time. And I think that in itself can be very, very challenging. And I still have my moments where things are really close to home and I have to manage my own emotions and around those type of issues. And the thing is, that is expected, through this line of work. And so, in a way, that part of the work, I feel I can handle that, and something that I've learned to navigate for the most part. And it reminds me of my own humanity and enhances my compassion and empathy for others. And I think at this point, the hardest thing that I think many of us, when we enter this field, that we're not prepared for is early on, especially in my work. I worked in many different agencies and corporations, and I think while a lot of these corporations have great missions around social welfare and behavioral health, they drained so much out of me, and my passion and my drive often was traded for like numbers and metrics to boost the outlook of the company, and rather than providing actual high standard and quality of care. And I think the longer I worked in these companies, I saw the high burnout rates, staff turnovers, and I worry about the economically like driven like high healthcare systems where it's all about numbers and streamlining therapy to make it short term,
Mhm.
um, and making it more accessible. And I think the biggest challenge as a therapist that something that's not talked about enough is just the reality of that. The stigma around like being a therapist. People think that being a therapist is not, it's not going to make a lot of money. And I've spoken to a lot of younger aspiring therapists where they don't want to go into mental health or be a therapist because they don't think they can make a living doing it. And I think there's a lot of stigma for therapists to want to make more money and make a living for themselves. And I always think that's strange because doctors, and nurses, they are well respected and they make, good money, a good living. I want to just change that perspective and really reform like how people think about mental health practices.
Oh, we're 100% behind that. It's one of the reasons we created the
Yeah.
Therapist a Million. So totally agree with that. Now, how do you look after your own mental health, or what is your top tip for mental health in the world today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I am big on like leading by example. So I do it the same way I encourage my clients.
Mhm.
I try to adopt a lifestyle and habits that are consistent with optimizing self-care. I think, I really believe in being proactive versus reactive. And I believe that the three main components for most of us that we have control over is exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And I think
Yeah.
those are so important to optimize. If you're not optimizing those things, it's like an uphill battle. So even though these three things will not solve all our problems, we're better having them in place than not having them at all. So with depression and anxiety, a lot of those three elements that I just mentioned, when I work with people with depression and anxiety, those are the three things that seems to be compromised and it seems to deteriorate. So if we can just maintain those, and I think having that consistency and that stability through those three things can help us battle all the other things that we face in life. And that's what I implement in my life. Like a non-negotiable for me is definitely exercise. I exercise no matter how I feel. I try to really maintain that persistence and consistency with it. And then also nutrition. I really try to optimize how I eat and try to minimize the amount of processed foods I eat, knowing that that affects how my brain functions.
Mhm.
And sleep, definitely rest and recover.
Sleep's such a big one because
Yes.
I sleep really well, but last night I woke up,
Yeah.
I think it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and my brain was like going. I was thinking about my weekly email that I send out on a Friday and had a really good idea for it, and I was like,
Yeah.
I think I probably got another half hour of sleep, and obviously that's like the end bit is where you get some really good REM sleep as well. And so I woke up, and I just felt like in a bad mood, so I just thought, right, I'm going to counteract this. So
Yes.
I did a long meditation. I didn't go to sleep. I actually did a longer meditation, hour and 20-minute meditation. Hydrated a lot during the day and took some supplements as well, some brain health supplements. I
Yeah.
absolutely smashed it today, even though I got
I
terrible
love that.
sleep.
Way to
And I am
go.
going to bed early tonight.
That's great. That is great. I love it.
Using some hypotheticals and no identifying factors. What's an example of a really good success story in your practice?
Oh, wow. A really good success story. Um, I guess a specific example I can give is actually a very recent one. I think everyone struggles with loss. And this client I have, I'm not going to use any identifying information, but this person came to me because he had lost someone very close to him. And I think this is representative of a lot of what many people experience. And the loss was very tragic. It was very abrupt. The client struggled with immense guilt, not guilt from the death itself, but guilt from the relationship that they had with this person that was when they were alive. The client couldn't forgive himself, and he was extremely hard on himself because of this, and he feel like he couldn't make up for it. He couldn't let go of the experiences that he had when this person was still around. And we got to this place in therapy where he came to a very touching realization, and it makes me feel emotional just reflecting on this because it was such a powerful experience just hearing him get through this, to this realization. And the client expressed to me that even though that this person is gone, he realizes that he can still improve his relationship with this person, that the connection is always there with him and they exist inside of him. the emotional attachment, the memories, the mutual relationships that he has, uh, and the meaningful projects and rituals that he can still maintain just in honor of this person. And he realized strongly that this person is still very much alive in other ways, and this still, you know, that he still has the opportunity to improve his relationship with this person. And I think that realization, that when he came to that, it was so beautiful just to see how healing that was for him, and how that got into this place where he realized it's not over yet for him. You know, he can still build this relationship and improve so much of his own quality of life, and how he can honor this person, that relationship that he has with this person.
I love
And you
that.
know,
So powerful.
I work with both kids and adults, and I think that this example illustrates something very beautiful. It illustrates the importance of finding meaning,
Mm.
and it's really special because the meaning can truly enhance their quality of life. And when a client comes in with a troubling past trauma, a tragic loss, or even like everyday stress, they somehow find that silver lining. And I think the reason that this helps, I think this helps appreciate and even embrace the difficulty they are experiencing, because it's revealing something that's very real and very human. And I think that's just magic.
I love that. Speaking of success, share a
Yeah.
technique that you've used to successfully grow your practice.
Oh, I think being my online presence has gotten better. I think that's something that I try to really step into more of. In the beginning, I was doing the old fashioned of just like direct networking, talking to people I know. And I realized that starting an online practice, I needed to really increase my digital footprint and presence online.
Yeah.
So I've been open to doing more talks like this. Also starting my podcast and trying to get more in tune with social media, and how to follow the trends and create my own brand, and just trying to get my message out there. I think just being, just like what you mentioned earlier about myself, is just taking those insane 20 seconds of courage just to try to step into certain situations and do things I'm not used to doing. I think that has been really helpful with growing my practice.
I love that. So, what are your plans for expansion? Are you going to jump on TikTok?
I realized that it's trying to choose some things that are very uh, it's like focusing on one or two things really, because when I have too many things going on at once,
Yep.
it's definitely exhausting. So I think I'm going to try to focus on more long form media, like social media work, like maybe YouTube, and then cutting it down to make it more short form, and maybe putting on TikTok, and maybe using even YouTube Shorts and Instagram.
Now, speaking of longer form content, are you thinking of writing a book?
Yeah. I thought about this for a very long time, actually, and obviously I haven't gotten to that yet. But yes, I would love to eventually start to write a book, and I've had so many ideas around this. And one of the titles that I thought of, or maybe something along the lines, like, so I first of all, I like um, Dr. Jordan Peterson's book, 12
Yep.
Rules for Life, and I think the number 12 just works really well, like the 12-step program. So I just thought of like, oh, maybe 12 lessons from trauma and adversity. And
I like
it's
that.
and I think that would be I would like to write a book around like my experiences and lessons that I've learned from my clients, and who've experienced hardship and trauma, because I feel like that's representative of like the general population, the insight and the wisdom that comes with going through difficulties and hardship. And I think the main goal of the book would be to talk about post-traumatic growth and
Yep.
understanding and accepting that life is inherently hard and challenging. That instead of running away from our problems, let's figure out how to leverage them and find that silver lining, right? And to change the way we choose to live our lives with these problems that exist.
I love
And
that.
I tend to enjoy, books and movies that give a deeper look inside a therapist's mind. So this is the type of book that I could see myself writing.
Speaking of books, what's your favorite therapy book and why?
Oh, this Love's Executioner by Irvin Yalom.
Oh,
I'm
we
not
haven't
sure.
had
Do you
that
know
one
about that
yet.
book?
That's good. Yeah.
I love this book. It's I love it because like what I said earlier, it gives a very deep and honest look inside the mind of a well-respected therapist. This therapist is from Stanford University, and he writes this book about his experiences with his clients, and it's amazing. He's very transparent and open and honest about it, like how he thinks through the sessions, and it actually helped me become a better therapist just reading that book.
Love it. We'll put the link to that in the show notes. Now,
Yeah.
tell us a fact that blows our mind, or tell us a joke that's one of a kind to win 3 months free membership to the Therapist to Millions.
I definitely don't have any jokes, but I'm big on physical health and using our body to help with our mental health. So I think one of the most important facts that there's a lot of studies on, if we consume less processed foods, then our IQ increases by 14%, just about, and that's significant. And this just reinforces the idea of like mind-body connection, right? In the gut and brain health. So I think that's really important.
That's amazing. And if anyone doesn't believe that, then just go and have half a packet of biscuits and see how your IQ drops.
Yes. Yes.
That's amazing.
Gives you that brain fog.
Brain fog, that's it. Absolutely, yeah. And finally, how can people get hold of you? We'll put all of your social media and your email and your website in the show notes. But how can people get hold of you?
Yeah, just in that way. My website is probably the best way. It has my email and contact information on there. And of course, my social media pages, Instagram, you can just search Author Mind Counseling. And I'm also on Twitter, which is my handle name is Inward Institute. And I use it as a journal. So it's like a lot of my thoughts are on there.
Excellent. We'll follow you on that as well. And you do coaching on Zoom as well. So you've got a global audience, yeah?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, fantastic. Great. Thank you so much, Albert, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. And I know you've got your full day ahead of you as well. So really appreciate you.
Yes.
Appreciate what you're doing on the front line of mental health. And thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much, Damien. You take care of yourself.
Brilliant. You take care. Thanks, Albert.
Bye.
If you would like to take part as a guest on the Therapist to Millions podcast, simply email me, damien@therapisttomillions.com. That's Damien with 2 A's, as all of the guests on the show will get 3 months free access to our Therapist to Millions membership worth $300. So if you would like to know how to write a best-selling book, secure a TEDx talk, create membership sites with content you don't even have to create, build client acquisition funnels, effective lead magnets, or your very own podcast, and way more besides, why not head over to thetherapisttomillions.com and join our community of like-minded professionals. And if you'd like an additional $20 off your membership, simply type in the coupon code PODCASTLISTENER at the checkout.